Greetings, old school magic players, and welcome to the Four Horsemen. Greetings, old school magic players. Welcome to the Four Horsemen on Sunday, March 16th. In today's video, we're going to be covering our tournament number 19 finals. I'm joined here today with John Eccleberry. John, how's it going?
Good. Glad to be here.
All right, so this is going to be our tournament 19 finals match. We're going to be doing this live today. John and I are here a little early to do the deck tech and pregame. And if you've seen the prior videos, you've probably been following our two main competitors that are here in the finals, Lorenzo and Tim. Check us out at fourhorsemenmagic.com. This is our 19th tournament, wrapping up right on time, John. Today, March 16th. How about that? We stuck to the schedule.
Whoa, that's like it's a Christmas miracle.
Christmas miracle, post-Christmas miracle. We've actually been doing pretty good, sticking to our schedules. All the players have been really excited to play and get their games in. Some fantastic prizes. John will be mailing out some of these awesome player proxies and token cards, and our first place winner will get the Ken Meyer Jr. signed, numbered, unique artwork Guardian Beast playmat exclusive to the Four Horsemen. John, I made a new overview of your cards. These cards, tell the viewers a little bit about how you put these together.
Oh, sure, I will. If you can share your screen with me too, that'd be great. Mm-hmm. I started doing some proxies for one of the other niche formats, Fallen Empires 40, about a year ago. I did, I think, about 50 proxies last year. But a lot of them, the inspiration kind of came from the old Magic the Gathering comic books. And there's a lot of cool art in there that I felt like could be mined for cards. And as you see on the screen here, these Fallen Angels and the Oubliettes and the Sorceress Queen, those all came from the old Magic the Gathering Armada comic books. And then, of course, I've got a couple other ones thrown in there, too. That pinhead is from a Marvel comic, and then there's a shot from the movie. And there's a cool website called MTG Librarities that has an old, amongst many of the things that they offer, they have a section on the old Magic video game. And the Micro Prose video game had art for all of those old school tokens. And so I swiped those and printed some tokens as well. And finally, you'll see the island there from the old April Fool's issue of The Duelist, the Arabian Nights Islands. So we've got all that fun stuff to send out to people, and it was fun to make all of it, and it's always fun to see it hit the screen across from me.
Yeah, these things have made it all over the world, all over Europe, Australia, all over the US and Canada. These go out to our top 8 players, and you can choose the cards you like while supplies last, and John will send these out to you. The other prize that we want to highlight, if you've seen our YouTube channel, you saw the interview recently with Ken Meyer Jr. This is our unique Guardian Beast Four Horsemen Purple Moonlight playmat. We will send you one of these if you win first place. So join us in our future tournaments. Check us out at fourhorsemenmagic.com. We'd love to have you play with us. All right, John, let's take a look at the brackets. This has been a really interesting tournament. We've seen a return to aggro, a move away from control. If you've seen the prior match videos, there's been some really great games. And today we're going to be covering our finals match, Tim Kincaid versus Lorenzo Rochetta. Let's take a look at the decks. So, John, Tim is back with his Juxtapose 2.0, and Lorenzo has made it all the way to the finals with his Erhnam's Bloodlust aggro deck.
Yeah, we've been seeing a resurgence of green-red in the last couple months with the current banned and restricted. It kind of fallen out of favor, but it's back now in the last few tournaments, and it's made it all the way to the finals this time. Tim's deck is really interesting. He played this last time, and he came back and tweaked it a bit, and we'll see the changes that he made to it here.
Yeah, but a couple of really cool decks. The Juxtapose combo is really at the center of Tim's deck, and just some really creative and aggressive aggro on Lorenzo's part. Let's start with Tim's deck. You know, for those of you who've been watching, Tim actually did some of the earlier commentary on his matches to share with you his own player's view while he's playing, which is really cool. And John, you know, what do you think of Tim's version 2 of his Juxtapose deck here?
You can tell that he's played this deck before and tweaked it because there's a little more whimsy, I guess you could say. There's all these kind of one-of for utility. You know, he's got an archaeologist. He's got the wizard that makes extra mana. He's got a rocket launcher. You know, he's got some singleton cards in there to kind of help him along the way. And then, of course, he's got, you know, a lot of low-cost dudes that he can swap for their larger casting cost things with the Juxtapose. He could also swap an artifact with them when that spell resolves. And so he could, like, give them a Fellwar Stone for something good. Or maybe he can give them something and then boomerang it back to his hand, and he, you know, gets to have the best of both worlds. I don't know if he was playing Su-Chi last time or not. I don't think he was.
Yeah, Su-Chi's a new addition. That's right.
Yeah, Su-Chi's kind of interesting here in this deck. It gives him a beater, but it's also an artifact to swap. They have something better, or a creature. You know, it fills both roles, so that's kind of interesting. There may be a few new cards in this board, too. I'm not sure he was playing Preacher before. That's pretty cool. He's got a Fountain of Youth for a little extra life gain. He's got a lot of singletons here. He's got a Presence of the Master. He's got a Greater Realm of Preservation, Ivory Tower. So he's got kind of a lot of one flash counter, you know, things to kind of aid him along the way. He knows that he can probably play a long game, and that he'll be able to draw into some of these things.
Yeah. Let's take a look at the card that makes this deck work. I'm going to flash up Juxtapose here. So Juxtapose says you and target player exchange control of the creature you each control with the highest mana value. And then you exchange control of artifacts the same way. If two or more permanents a player controls are tied for the highest, their controller chooses one of them. So this card, I think the first player to really start to tinker with this card was Parker Boab, and he was playing a blue-red Electric Eels deck that had a bunch of fast, you know, aggro blue-red creatures, and he was using Juxtapose early on. And I think he made it to top 8 and maybe even a semifinals game here or there, but never made it into the finals with that deck. Tim has really built his entire deck around the Juxtapose combo. And what he's done is he's figured out ways to basically give his opponent low value, kind of mediocre crap, and he gets whatever good creature and artifact they have.
So let me see if I can understand this right with the way that the resolution works. Can he give them a Su-Chi for their best creature, and then on the second part give them like a Fellwar Stone or a Brassman to get his Su-Chi back if they don't have any other artifacts?
That's right. So
that's pretty cool. That's
right.
Pretty cool.
Right. So one of the rulings is first the creatures are exchanged, then artifacts are exchanged. It's possible that the same artifact creature may be involved in both exchanges. So yes, you're right on point there, John. His sneaky little potential advantage is he can give the opponent the Su-Chi, and that's the big creature exchange potentially. Or he can give them, let's say, a brass man, right? Because that's a creature. Or he can have a Triskelion in play and give them a Triskelion, but pop off the damage arms first. And then if they don't have any other artifacts, and the only artifact they have is that brass man he gave them, or the Suchi or the Triskelion, then he can give them his Fellwar Stone if he has it, and then they have to give back the Triskelion, the Suchi, or the brass man. So it can be a double whammy for the opponent, but he has to have just the right scenario and setup to do it. But he's structured his deck to do precisely that, and primarily Brassman and Triskelion are what makes it work. Let me flash the Brassman up here. So Brassman, this is a card that we all played as kids. It was reprinted and revised, and this card never sees play in Old School Magic in any other format. But in Four Horsemen, it's really started to gain ground because it's only 1 mana, and it's a 1/3 that can block all the weenies, Curd Apes. It can block, any 1/1 or 2/2 or 2/3 even, and still survive. It's particularly good against Mishra's Factory. And the fact that it only costs 1 mana allows you to get it out early. And once your opponent plays an Erhnam Djinn or a Juzum Djinn or something big that's a big threat, well, Tim plays Juxtapose, and you'll get the crappy Brass Man or, a spent Triskelion, and he'll get your big fatty.
Right.
So that's how the combo works, and it's been super effective for Tim in this tournament. The other cards that you mentioned earlier in Tim's deck are things like the Archaeologist. That card is absolutely a powerhouse. The ability to get your artifacts back over and over, super, super, super strong in this deck in particular, because he can get his Suchis back, he can get his Brassman, his Tetravis, anything that happens to die during the game, he can always get it back later. And notice he's also running Sage of Latnam, John.
Yeah, and Sage is pretty cool. It's a card that I like. I always like it when it pops up in this format, but it's particularly potent here because he's got a fair number of artifacts, or if he gets an artifact from them that he doesn't really need, he can just sack it to draw a card. It's also another 1/2 body, so it can block pesky little 1/1s and still survive.
Right.
It's pretty neat. I like it. Also, in this deck, he has an interesting thing where he could, if he needed to, he could attack with a Suchi, get the damage in, and then he could sack it to draw a card, and then get the extra mana, and then use the mana to cast like a Tetravis or something, or a Triskelion.
That's right.
If he had 6 yet, or just extra mana to cast a Juxtapose or something like that. So there's some kind of fun tricks that you can do. Or if you just are sitting around and you have too much mana and you want to sack a Fellwar Stone to draw a card, the utility is very good. There's not a lot of card draw in Four Horsemen. We do see that there's a small book in his deck there, the Jalem Tome, which is also very good. But having the extra ability to draw cards is always good.
Yeah, this card in the prior matches has been a powerhouse. Sage of Latnam. It's good early game for blocking weenies. It's good mid to late game for sacking stuff and drawing. And if anything gets, Divine Offeringed or, crumbled, or if you get something that, gets a Spirit Link on it or Oubliette or something like that, you can always just sack that artifact to the Sage and draw cards. And you're right. If you do it in the right time, your first main or your second main, and you're sacking Suchi, like maybe a Spirit Link Suchi or something, then you get that mana and you can power out some of these big Triskelions or Tetravis or a Tawnos Coffin.
Yeah, it's very good. There's a couple coffins in there too. That's cool. Yep. So he can also do the Trike Coffin combo, or he can use it for removal. He's got a lot to work with in this deck. He has a lot of tools in his box.
Yes, he really does. And we'll take a quick look at Tawnos Coffin, and then let's look at Lorenzo's deck. So Tawnos Coffin, this card never been reprinted. It is an absolute powerhouse because it kind of functions similar to an icy manipulator. That we don't have icy in Four Horsemen, but Tano's Coffin continues to prove to be unbelievably powerful because it can mess with your combat, and it has that instant ability. It can protect your creatures from enchantments, or you can pull them out of combat before damage step. There's just so many ways to use it, but it also just exiles one of your opponent's creatures, and then you can still untap it, and that creature comes into play tapped, so it still can't block. It's super, super functional. And then, like you pointed out, the combo with Triskelion, if Triskelion is put in the coffin, when it comes back into play, it gets 3 more counters, as if it were just cast. So that's also a super powerful combo in Tim's deck.
Yeah, it's a weird old-timey Magic thing where it's not exiled, really. Like, it's removed, but it keeps its counters. So normally if you remove something and then somehow brought it back, it wouldn't keep the old counters and get the new ones.
Right.
But with the functionality of Coffin, you can just stockpile counters on the trike until you have 20 counters, and you can just kill your opponent in one shot or whatever.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. It's a combo that's worked well in Old School and in this format in particular.
Yeah. So that's Tim Kincaid's Juxtapose 2.0 deck. John, let's take a look at Lorenzo's Erhnam's Lust. What do you think of this spicy red-green aggro brew?
This is pretty fun. I really like, we're kind of getting ahead of myself looking to the sideboard, but I really like the pro-reg creatures in the Infernos. I think that's kind of interesting. That could be something to lean into if his deck's having a hard time with, whatever the opposing strategy is. The main deck is pretty much the standard green-red that you would see, the Curd Apes, the Erhnams, the Pixies, leaning into the best creatures available there. It is a little bit creature light. He's leaned a bit more into the burn, a full 4 Pyrotechnics with his Chain Lightnings, full 4 Bloodlust, an Inferno main board, and then 3 main board Blood Moons. So he's kind of really hoping to catch some of these tri-colored control decks with their pants down. So we'll see if that happens or not.
Yeah. Yeah, you hit a lot of the highlights there. Let's just start off with some of the basics. The Argothian Pixies have continued to prove themselves just absolute powerhouses, coming out for early damage and getting in for early damage. They're great against all the artifact creatures. We see so many robots, Triskelions, Tetravis, Suchis, dancing scimitars, you name it. And these guys can't be blocked by any of those and are immune to all of them. So the Pixies are fantastic. And, looking at the other cards, typical, we've got the Curd Apes, right? We just did with Ken Meyer Jr. the kind of full review of his top Arabian Nights creatures, and Curd Ape is probably, one of the most recognizable cards in Old School. Such a classic card. If he gets a Taiga and a Curd Ape on turn 1, your opponent can have a really hard time keeping up with that 2 points of damage until they get a decent blocker. But we've also got the Erhnam gens, right? This is your typical red-green. Erhnam is, this is like the most common green, creature that we see in all the top aggro decks and Four Horsemen if they're running green.
Another Ken Meyer Jr. classic.
Another Ken Meyer Jr. classic, my favorite card of all time. And also what, helped us inspire the playmat art, but focusing on the Guardian Beast, which not in this deck, but is, a powerful card unto itself. And then, of course, we mentioned Triskelion earlier. Triskelion continues to be the, probably most functional, powerful artifact creature card in Four Horsemen. Not in every single deck, but in a lot of decks.
It's seen probably the most play of any creature. Would you say? Like, if we went through all of the top 8 decks in all of the tournaments, I think that Trike would be pretty well represented.
Yeah, it's so strong. And the fact that, running the one of Mishra's workshop, we still see that early workshop allows you to power into some of these larger artifact creatures like Suchi and Triskelion and Tetravis. So it's just a really great all-around card because of its damage ability and its ability to combine with other cards like Chain Lightning, Pyrotechnics, other cards that do damage to finish off, a 4 a power or 5 power toughness creature. Let's see, what else have we got to take a look at?
The only thing that he's not running that I feel like would probably fit pretty well in this deck is Rook Eggs. Because he's got the Chain Lightnings for him, he's got Infernos, he's got Pyrotechnics. Like, he's got lots of ways to crack them, even if there's not an attacker. And 4/4 flyers are just pretty powerful in this format. But I don't know, maybe he's just got enough pressure that he doesn't need to take the time to get a token out. It is kind of a slow card.
Yeah, it can be slow. It looks like he's opted for the Argothian Pixies and the Blood Moons. The
Blood Moons are probably the slot. And also he's got a couple Winds of Change in his main deck. So that's like 5 slots that could have been, more dudes if he wanted to be a little bit more on the aggro plan. And I also think it's funny when you have Bloodlust in your deck and you attack with your 0/3 Rook Egg and they don't block it and you Bloodlust it. That's always fun.
Yeah.
But he might just not need it. We'll see.
Yeah, I've got Winds of Change up here because it's down in the lower left by his lands, and you pointed it out. That's a card we typically only see with land tax, so it is kind of curious that it's in his deck. But once he gets to, enough mana to play out his Erhnams, the deck really doesn't need... I mean, it needs 5 mana for Pyrotechnics and 6 for Triskelion, but he's going to be sitting on, a pretty decent mana base. So mid to late game, he may have a lot of lands in hand, and he may want to ditch those and try and draw into more burn.
Yeah, turning your lands into burn seems pretty good. It is, without the addition of any kind of real card draw, it is a bit of a card disadvantage to play the Winds of Change, but I don't know. Maybe it'll work out for him. Like we said, there's not a ton of card draw in Four Horsemen. And I feel like you have to have something in your deck. I mean, he does have Jalem Tome.
Right.
But I don't know. Well, I would be interested to talk to him, and because obviously he's made it this far. He's made it to the finals. I wonder how often he's played a solid wins and it's turned out for him, or if it's a card that provides a really good flex slot for him to side out. I mean, it might be a card that he takes out regularly.
Yeah, maybe. Let's take a look at Bloodlust. So this deck, he called it Erhnam's Lust. And, the Bloodlust is such a sneaky powerhouse for early damage. Obviously, he's trying to get in there and hit for that +4 with his Curd Apes or with his Argothian Pixies, or even with a big Erhnam Djinn hit. 8 damage in 1 turn on the Erhnam can be killer if it gets through, or even just a 6 damage hit from a Curd Ape that's bloodlusted or a bloodlusted Pixies can also be a lot of damage to deal with.
Absolutely.
And then you combine that with the 4 Chain Lightnings and the 4 Pyrotechnics, and then he's got that one-off Inferno in there. What do you think about that?
It's a little expensive for the deck because he's not playing like Fellwar Stones or anything, but I don't know. I like burn and I like red, so it's cool. It's also an instant, so that's kind of fun. You can catch somebody by surprise maybe at the end of their turn, and then hit them with some more burn on your turn or something like that. He also, as I mentioned at the beginning, has a little bit of an Inferno strategy in his sideboard where he's got some pro red creatures.
Right.
And he could bring in those and additional Infernos. And then, there's not a lot of sweepers in Four Horsemen, but Inferno is one of them. And so if he can wipe the board and still have a guy to crack back with, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned those Beasts of Bogarden, right? These guys, awesome card from Legends, really killer art from Daniel Geelan, and this is a card that I think was reprinted in Chronicles, so we all had this card and played with it. It's only a 3/3 for 5 mana, but it's only 1 red, and it does get +1/+1 if your opponent has non-token white permanents, which is pretty cool. But it has protection from red, like you pointed out. So if he comes up against a red deck, he can sideboard these in, and they can also be in play if he does cast Inferno, and they'll be immune to it.
That the bonus is probably rarely seen, especially in Four Horsemen. There's not a lot of like mono white decks getting played, but it's funny. It's actually kind of good against Tim because Tim's got some white enchantments.
Yeah.
And so if he's got a white enchantment down, then that's going to make this thing a 4/4. And the enchantment's not going to go anywhere, even if the board gets wrath. So it's actually not so bad.
Yeah, it could be an interesting sideboard card. Other sideboard cards that Lorenzo has, he's got a couple more Infernos, which is really kind of interesting. He's going to need 7 mana to fire off those things, but they could be instrumental in some of these longer control games where you've got people hanging on with a few life and you need something sneaky mid to late game. Maybe instrumental. He's also got a couple of Storm Seekers. That's a card we haven't seen too much of in Four Horsemen, but something we all know and all played as a kid.
Stormseeker's pretty cool, especially against a control deck, because they might be holding a bunch of stuff, and that all that extra direct damage is pretty powerful if you've already been chipping in early.
Yes, that's right. When you combine all those other red damage spells and a lot of the early damage from Curd Ape and Pixies and maybe a Bloodlust, then being able to hit for whatever your card count in hand is in terms of damage could be a finisher. And then of course he's got the 4 mandatory active volcanoes there if he comes up against blue. What do you think of running this one of Felden's Cane?
I mean, it's all right. I don't think it's that great in this particular deck. There's not any kind of like combo with it or anything. I mean, I guess he can just restock some burn into his library or something like that. I don't know. I don't think it really does much.
Well, we've been seeing this more and more in people's sideboards, the one of Felden's Cane, mainly because of these life-gaining decks or these control decks that, end up playing for longer time frames. And yes, if you can recycle all your Triskelions and your creatures and mainly your burn or these Bloodlusts, it can be really good. Plus, notice one card we haven't talked about in Lorenzo's main board is he's running 3 of Jaloom Tomes, which we haven't really seen that high a volume of Jaloom Tomes in very many decks. What do you think about that, John?
3 might be a little bit excessive, but I mean, I think it's a really solid card. So, and you could either pitch a duplicate copy to the tome that's already out to draw another card, or you could get 2 of them going at once, which is kind of fun if you're really digging for something. I just let Tim know that we're in the secondary, whereby you might want to shoot Lorenzo a message as well.
Okay.
I don't have him in my friends list.
All right, let me. Because I had originally told those guys to meet us over in John in your whereby. So let me just tell them to do that.
Sounds good.
Hey man, it's going good. How are you today, John? Right on.
Okay, the players are starting to join in the whereby, so John and I will wrap up the deck text. That's a great look at the two decks, Lorenzo's Erhnam's Lust versus Tim's Juxtapose 2.0. We wish both Tim and Lorenzo the best of luck, and this is going to be a great match. All right, Tim has joined us in the whereby, and we're just waiting for Lorenzo to join us.